Welcome back to Into Youth, the movement, where we explore the raw, unfiltered emotions that come with healing and transformation. In this second episode, I promised you that we were going to dive boldly into the second stage of grief, and that's anger. I told you it was pretty challenging as well. Anger shows up in many forms: frustration, resentment, even rage. And often masks the deeper like pain beneath. It can also feel chaotic, confusing, and even shameful. But what I told you today, what if I told you today that anger has a purpose? Yeah, that it's not the enemy, but maybe a messenger, right? Today we'll sit in the heat of emotion. Yeah, with their voices that have buried with fury and risen from the ashes. Will challenge the idea that this anger is something to hide, and instead begin to understand what it is trying to say. This is not just a movement, it is the movement. Welcome to the fire. So, you guys, I don't know if I formally said who I was. My name is Gilia Hess, and I come from a background of, I started up in, therapy with my degree, and I, always wanted my own private practice and healing, all the things that we go through so that we could like live our best life. And then I got sidetracked with the entertainment industry and, created Mecco Entertainment, where we produced Into Youth talk show. So, I kind of went off the pattern, but trying to help others in another way. And then I've circled back around to presenting, Into Youth, the movement, to you all to circle back around to the helping aspect, because there has been a lot of things that we've gone through. When you talk about grief, because I don't know in the first segment when we talked about shock and denial, and I was talking about the different forms of grief. I don't know that I really, honed in on. I think I've talked a lot about when you lose someone, because I talked a lot about, losing my mother, right? But what about, I think briefly towards the end, I talked about like divorce is a grief, right? You losing a job is grief. There are other forms of grief because when you think about being married to someone for years and they become your best friend, you do everything together, your finances, all the families get intermingled together, and then all of a sudden years later you become divorced, and you are going to grieve that because your life is not the same. Your traditions change, your movements from day to day change. Sometimes your proximity will change, right? So you're grieving how your life once was, and then you're trying to adjust to, those changes, right? Which can you imagine the anger in that? Like, really? I made a promise. The spouse of mine, we vowed to be together for life. And really, now I'm faced with trying to find a new life for myself. And then you also think of, jobs. You're like, this is my job. I plan to just be here until I retire, right? Kind of not like that anymore. But there are some that feel like they're going to be here until they retire. And then there could be a downsize, or they could just go another direction. And then you're either let go, or just things your job, you're at a loss with your job, right? And so that changed the game because perhaps from a financial perspective, because you just lost your job, you may have to change your proximity. You may have to move because of your expenses, right? And you may have to move to another state depending on your situation. And then your day to day, like the friends you saw, your coworkers, your routine, all those things change when your situation changes. So then you become grief. And with grief, again, comes anger. You're angry that how dare they let me go? Or what am I going to do now? I'm fearing now my future, right? So there goes the anger after that shock, right? And denial that I just lost my job. Now I'm angry, like, really? How could you guys do that, right? Going back to the marriage. Really? How could you put me in a situation where now I have to, be alone, or now I have to be out in this dating game again? So you're angry and just all the other things. And then of course, with the loss that I've talked about a lot, is losing a loved one. So I just kind of wanted to highlight, because I don't know that I did on shock and denial, that there are other different forms. And let's keep in mind, this is a very important, topic, episode to hone in on, because, yes, we have gone through surprising losses, or expected losses, with parents or someone that has a terminal illness, right? Some type of expected. But think about this, because, you go back to 2020, look at all those losses that occurred from COVID. Look at how the game changed, how our life changed from COVID. That said, I can't tell you how many people went into grief just from the incident of COVID alone, right? So it is just imperative that we dive in and talk about all, I say, 8 stages, right? Because I included that lost stage where you just feel like you're lost. Um, and I wanted to do them, individually, because I wanted to hone in, personally with each stage, so that we really can get a feel for what we're going through, and also to understand that we can go through these stages, like two at the same time. Isn't that wild? Yeah, two at the same time. You could be shocked and denial and angry at the same time and depressed. There's three, right? Um, or you can go through four of those stages and get all the way to bargaining, and then find yourself back to the anger stage again. So you will flip flop and move through them. And then some may just move through all the stages and get to acceptance and move on with their life. So there's no rocket science to, how we move through these stages of grief, or how we grieve, period. Because we all grieve differently, right? Which is why we shouldn't tell people how to grieve. Mm? No, we should just talk about what those stages are, so that we can acknowledge and understand what is going on with a friend, with a loved one, with a coworker, with a parent, you name it. If we understand what the stages are, we can probably understand where, our loved one or friend and so forth are at in that stage, so that we know where we sit in terms of being there for them. So let's talk about anger, because that is what we're the episode that we're in today. There is like different ways to navigate this. Okay. So let's just go there, right? The first thing is you got to recognize it, right? Recognize the anger, right? Because if you recognize it, you'll want to deal with it, right? But if you don't and you hide and you pretend, you're really not going to deal with it. And so it's going to fester, and it's going to now be inside yourself, right? And stirring up, all of the ailments, you high blood pressure, anxiety, all the things that could cause more critical health situations when you hold things in. So you don't want to do that. So you definitely want to recognize what it is. Then you want to understand the connection between the anger and the grief, right? Like, hey, anger can be a manifestation of deeper emotions: sadness, fear, and helplessness, right? So you got to understand that level that you're in. You know, what level is it? Well, like, what does it have to do with? Um, what am I sad about in regards to this grief I'm experiencing? What am I fearing? And what helplessness, why am I feeling helpless, ness in this factor? So you gotta, understand, like, why, the why to the why you're angry. And then allow yourself to feel it. I mean, why wouldn't you allow yourself to feel it? Why wouldn't you accept that you're in this stage, right? What I thought was so interesting is when, I often learn in this anger stage that you have to identify the source of the anger. I thought that was kind of interesting, because you have to, and you think about that, identify the source of the anger. And you're probably going, hmm, but it happens so fast, right? Your mind is moving so rampantly, you really kind of don't think about the source of the anger, do you? Like, is it towards yourself? Is it towards others? Or is it the actual situation, the particular loss? So that's kind of what you have to do, right? Consider those potential underlying emotions. So, when you think about some of these underlying emotions of anger, is it like, oh, you feeling betrayed? Mm, divorce, job, someone leaving you for life, death, right? Do you feel abandoned? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel guilty because if you think of a divorce, um, did I not communicate enough? Did I not see any of the signs, or did I not see any of my spouse's pain? What did I ignore to bring us to this situation? In a death situation, did I like, let me give you a personal example. For my mom, I had so much guilt because my mom was just like healthy as a like she was always just so healthy because she was taking care of everybody else, right? So she never talked about being in pain, right? She never exhibited any, outward appearances of being in any pain, right? So when she passed, that is what I was left with, the guilt of why did I not see something was wrong with her heart? What are signs that shows that someone has a heart condition? Why didn't I do more when I did take her to do like one of the store blood pressure tests, and it read high, but she said the machine was broken. Why did I believe her? Because had I not believed her, we could have probably got that dealt with then, and she'd be here today, right? So all of that anger of why didn't I see why my mom was ill inside? What, right? Um, Also, when it happened and my mom left, yeah, I felt abandoned. We had lots of plans. Let me just put the premise out. My mom and I always lived together, right? And she took care of my daughter, so I didn't have to put my daughter in daycare. So we did everything together. So when you think of we were making plans, right? Yeah, I felt abandoned, and then I felt helpless because there's a lot of things that my mom did in a house from a household perspective that I didn't do, that I would now have to learn. You think about the cooking because you know how, you know, our elders, they cook, they do better than we do. It'd be good, right? I didn't have all that talent in the cooking. So I'm like, how am I going to cook for my daughter? You know, um, how do I navigate or move through this life without my best friend, without my mom, when I'm going anywhere, where I'm traveling, because we travel together, right? So I was experiencing helplessness, fear, abandon. Imagine all of these anger and this whole anger. I'm sorry, and guilt. So imagine in my whole anger and the emotions that are associated with anger, helplessness, fear, guilt, and abandonment and a helplessness. I don't think I had the whole bag of those tricks, right? I had it all. So you have to think then when you have the anger and it's in you, right? And you are so angry, what do you do with that, right? And let's not to mention, it doesn't even have to be towards the person, your anger, it doesn't have to be towards the person that you lost, be it a loved one, be it divorce, or, be it a job. It could be at others, right? It could be like you think of, a divorce, friends or family members that knew but never told you, right? He or she, your spouse, might have confided into things and they just never told you. And had they told you, you could have made better decisions, or you could have moved in a better way, right? To maybe solve the situation. When you think of jobs, you think of coworkers or friends you met on the job, or even, family or friends that coerce you to maybe behave a certain way on a job that really bit you kind of in the behind in the end. You're angry at them. In my situation with my mom, I found myself angry at relatives. I found myself angry, um, you know, at her close family members that, she would address that never really called her, never really, seen about her. Maybe siblings that stressed her out all the time. I found myself mad at others. And that's never good. And so what happened with that is I shut down with all of the family and siblings that I felt constituted for towards this anger that I'm feeling, those emotions. Um, and that's what others often do. You will shut down, again, if it's a divorce and his friends and his family and so forth, you will shut down on those parties, right? Jobs, if it's coworkers, friends, or family giving advice that cause you to be in the situation, you will shut down, right? So those are the kind of things you don't want to do. You don't want to do. Or if you do them, because I don't want to tell you not to, because you have to move the way that you need to move, right? But move through it and be analyzing your feelings, why you're feeling a certain way about the situation, about the people that are causing you to have these emotions, right? So that you're assessing it, so that you can circle back around and then finally have the conversation with the individuals that you were angry with. And that's important because that kind of helps you heal, right? Other things that you want to consider when you're going through the anger stage two for grief is stage two for grief that we're talking, and it's called the anger stage. You want to also, consider what outlets, because you don't want to be so angry that you end up harming yourself, or you choose events or situations or choices that are going to harm you, right? Which is kind of almost the direction that I went in, because I didn't use the outlet of let me speak to the people that I was angry with. So it left me alone with my emotions, with my anger. It left me alone. So then I started meeting new people that I didn't know anything about, and started just making bad choices in how I would relation with those people I was meeting. And again, knowing nothing about them and pretty much just putting myself in harm's way, right? Because I wasn't thinking, I was making poor choices, right? And that's what we don't want to do. So you want to make sure that you don't put yourself in harm's way. Or if you're realizing that you're going down that path, put the brakes on, sit with yourself, and say, this is not going to end up well. I've got to find a better way, right? Because you don't want to end up harming yourself. So let's just talk about, as we talked about all the emotions and all the tears that you would go through those stages of anger, all those emotions I mentioned. What can you do to get through this stage? Well, I mentioned in shock and denial stage one, meditation. Y'all don't want to do that. Like, y'all don't want to meditate. Meditation is so good for you. It's so good for you. Get to a quiet place by yourself, sit still, close those eyes, breathe in, breathe out, and allow yourself to think about what you've lost. Why do you think you're here in this place? What it meant to you, If it's a loss of a loved one, what did they mean to you? What are some of those conversations that you would have? What are the good times? Also, if it's a job, what were the good times on that job? What could I've done to just kind of like just think through, what can I do now? What did I learn from that job? What did I gain from that job that's going to help me on my next venture? Right? In this marriage, this divorce now that I find myself, what did I learn during my time in this marriage? What did I gain from this marriage that is going to help me in the next relationship? All right. Take all the talk to God. What do you have for me? You wrote my book. You wrote my entire story. I'm on page 16. What does 20 have for me? Talk to God because he can let you know. Right. So meditation is a good source uh, to help you navigate through the anger stage. And then also because you are angry, and it's all bottled inside. You don't want to have high blood pressure, creating a heart attack, stroke, anxiety that's going to create other elements, right? You don't want all that, or infester all of those cells causing cancer. So you want to work it out, work that anger out. And a good way to do that is, exercise. Go walking. I don't know if you have a bike, go ride your bike. Do you like nature? you know, Go mountain climb. There's places that you can mountain climb. I know we got that here in Georgia, so I don't know about your area, but the whole key is to do something. Oh, do you like pickleball? I love pickleball. Pickleball, oh my god, that's gonna get some things moving, right? Just something you like, tennis, basketball, just do something you like. And also, what helps you move through the anger stage, that's like the physical, just to kind of work through those anger feelings and emotions. But also, it's helpful to sit down and just journal, just write down how you feel, what you're going through, maybe some pros and cons of, where you're at now in your life. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do next? How are you going to navigate this new life you have now? Journaling is amazing. So I think those things are helpful. And if it's really, 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 really bad, I'm gonna say, yeah, I know you don't want me to say it, do you? I'm gonna say that you'd want to, seek support like therapy. Go talk to someone. um, it's always good to have, friends or family that, that you're close to and you can rely on, that you can communicate with, and, they can help you get through some of those tough anger, times, angry emotions, I should say, really. Um, but when you know that it is really, really bad and it's really causing you, day to day havoc, day to day misfortune. You just don't even know yourself. It is important to seek therapy. Um, that is therapy is something good. Oh, of course, I'm going to say that, right? Yeah, therapy is something good. It's going to help, guide you through. Number one, you get to talk through those feelings. This is what's so good about therapists. They allow you to talk through those feelings, and you've got someone sitting there listening to, um, all the things that you're feeling inside, all of your emotions, that can help you channel those thoughts and those feelings. So that's something you want to consider if it gets real bad. But again, I'd say physical activity, journaling, meditation, if it's not so severe, will definitely help you navigate through this second stage of grief, anger. And be patient. Be patient with yourself, right? It's nothing. You don't have to get through those stages tomorrow, a week, or a month, or a year. You move through these stages exactly the way that you need to move through them, the way that you want to move through them, right? So, be patient with yourself. Don't be ashamed that you're in this stage of anger and that you have anger and that you are angry at others. Don't be ashamed, right? Just work through it, right? Because we all go through it. We all have been through it, and we all are going to continue to go through it because there's always going to be a loss, right? We're there's people are not going to stop leaving us. Jobs are not going to stop ending. Yeah, if you talk about nope, we're not doing it political. We're not gonna do it. Okay, and relationships are always going to end, right? So it's just something that you want to allow yourself to move through and be patient with yourself. Okay. So that is kind of what I wanted to, get through, today is basically, getting you to understand, the root, of your anger, right? The root so you can find healthy ways to channel it. All right. I think we could do that, right? Okay, so guess what? We have talked about shock and denial. We did that on the first episode. And these are stages of grief that we're working on. We just completed the second episode, which is on anger. So, now we get to move into, our third stage. And um, I think for the third stage, I'm gonna move into like bargaining. I think I'm gonna do bargaining for the third, testing for the fourth stage, and then use the fifth stage for depression. Depression is really something I really need to hone in on. Okay, so that one I'll probably spend a bit more time on because that's kind of challenging and really severe, just like almost the anger stage. It could create a lot of ailments, right? So I really want to dive in things to really navigate that depression stage. So we're going to save that one out in just a bit, just probably around like the sixth. We'll work that fifth or sixth stage. All right. So let's do this. We are going to do episode 3 and we're going to do bargaining. You're like, what is that? What is bargaining? Right? Well, we're going to talk about it. All right. Thank you again. I am so glad that you guys joined us. That means that you want to understand those stages of grief. You are going through possible stages of grief. You know someone that is going through stages of grief and you want to help, right? You want to understand. So we got to help each other. So we got to be educated. We got to be aware so that we can all help each other get through this life. We got to help each other live our best life because that is what Into Youth, the movement, is all about. Helping you channel through these life situations because life happens. Did I say life happens? And Into Youth the Movement is going to help you navigate through life happening. Till next time, I will see you later.